he was singing like crazy as soon as I put the camera on. There we go. I don't know what you're saying, dude, but I'm down like a clown, Charlie Brown. So I'm going back. I didn't get everything totally covered the other night. We had good rain, good moisture in the soil, so excellent for germination for the seed potatoes. I hit a heavy spot here. I just came back to look at it before I came through it again. I want to make sure I'm not going to sink, because I did sink a little bit here. And I could feel as it was pulling and start to lean over a bit. Ended up having to, you can see where I had to lift up just to get up out of it. I was like, what was I grabbing on? And come back and look. And yeah, we're still pulling up a pretty heavy sod layer in here still. Which, you know, is fine. But the more important point I want to make here is look at all that wonderful aggregate in that soil. You see how that clay is opened up into aggregate? And we have like the agrosphere, and then down below that we have the porosphere. This is really what we're supposed to see in soil in general. And now there's a hard pan of clay here too. We're going to use some a bunch of different tools to open that up. We're going to use some calcium sulfate from a chemical standpoint. That'll help balance out the calcium magnesium. We'll talk about that more later. And another tool we're going to use is probably some daikon radish and some inoculants. And before you know it, that clay soil that looks like a hard pan enemy to you will become one of our best friends, because those clay colloids are holding on to all sorts of nutrients that we can't access because the biology isn't active and that clay hasn't been cracked open yet. But we're going to change that. We're going to turn that into that, and even way darker, like we looked up at where I dug with the backhoe, where you could see that 8 or 12 inch thick layer of dark loam. Yeah, we're gonna make that here, but much more quickly. So I'm going back along here. There's a few potatoes that I need to just tuck back in. As I'm forming beds, they got yanked out. I should have spent more time disking this soil, refining it, getting it smoother. And then of course doing it so wet is not helping me either. If it were drier, it would flow a little easier. But anyway, I had to get it done, so I'm just getting the beds formed up. They do look a lot nicer like that. I very much look forward to it. I have soil much more refined, and I can make really clean, sharp-looking beds. That's going to be awesome. But I found this rock here. I think it's a rock that I found. I broke it in half fairly easily with my hands, just to see. I don't know, maybe it's not a rock. Let's take a look at it at home on a big screen. We'll see spots like here where the soil is drier, a little sandier, more gravelly. Like this pressed up like a sandcastle almost. This came out really nice. It's like a firm bed, packed, but not too packed. It's like loose and plantable. This is a really nice way to plant stuff. I can't wait to start permaculture stuff in some of these. Yeah, I'm excited. That tool right there, that hill former, that was such a smart investment. Even way better than I realized at the time. Here's a good shot down the road where you can see where it was forming pretty well, but you can also see how, like, because the soil isn't quite refined yet, it wasn't quite filling that trenching quite right. And I'm having to go back at a couple spots and make sure things are filled. But like I say, once the soil gets refined, oh man, is that awesome? Or what? I wonder why I use tools like AutoCAD and precision elevation stuff. Well, here's an example of why precision elevation stuff really has a huge effect on your farming practices. First of all, from a watering standpoint, you can see there are places in this field here, all along its length, where water would stand and where water would run off. Down at this low perspective, it's quite obvious. If you go up a little bit higher and it's covered with a crop, it's a lot harder to see sometimes. But to that point, it also affects how a machine works through that field. Here's an example of that here. you can see how clean that bed is in this left-hand row here, the one closest to the grass. That bed's nice and clean as we come over the ridge top there, where the tractor's under an even load and it's not pulling uphill and digging at the same time, because it tends to dig. The lift on this machine is a little tricky for this sort of work. And then as you come down the grade, it's forming up pretty nice, even despite some pretty rough soil, right? Including some incorporated rocks and other organic material. And then as it comes back up this next grade, you can see how it really struggles. First, you can see where the machine cuts in. You can see how much deeper that cut is. And then as you come up, and I have to lift it up to keep it from stalling, you can see where I go from forming a clean bed here, and it switches over. And now we're not filling the bed all the way. So that's why things like AutoCAD and topographic maps and stuff like that can be really handy. And that's just a very small, low slope example. And when I dig up some of the old footage from the farm in 2009, I was on a very steep slope. And I did some water drop projection mapping for that. And I'll share that, and I'll discuss that a little bit more, because it's much more dramatic on a steep slope. And there are lots of people trying to farm on steep slopes and having trouble. There are ways to manage and mitigate that, but they take some understanding and knowledge, of course. And so now I'm standing at the far north end, looking down toward the south end. I'm standing at height, but now I'm going to squat down and let you go look at this from a little bit lower perspective. And then I'm going to bring it even a little bit lower, so you can really get an idea of just how much change there is in elevation there. Like I said, we're going to really dive into that stuff in an upcoming episode of...
So here we are in AutoCAD on Reboot Agriculture 19, a recent video I did on, that was from the 8th of June. I talked a little bit about elevation and how that affects the actual implementation of farming on a piece of land. So I thought I would go in here. My friend Marty, who I work for as an engineer now, this is an awesome job to fall into, but he was nice enough to pull out the topographic maps from the GIS system for me and import them so I could use them. I haven't been able to get back and finish up following up with drone and importing databases and all that stuff. I've been busy rebuilding computers and tractors and trying to implement a farming operation while I work a new job and climb a new learning curve in that job. So a lot going on. Anyway, if we go back here, this is an area is about 10,000 square feet. If I can get it to, there we go. Highlight here. So that's that strip that I disked up and cut rows in for potatoes. 3 of those rows are planted. 1 is not planted yet. And then there's more room over here where that soil actually gets even richer and darker over here as we get close to that tree line. That does make sense because we know what plants and trees do for soils. They build tremendous soil capacity and tremendous soil carbon in a very short period of time when given the opportunity. Anyway, I showed how terrain elevation changes, and I showed that one spot in the middle of that block where you can see that hump rises and falls, and we can see that topo line cross it right here. And you can see there's a little bit lower point here, and again over in here, and you can see that low point off to the edge there down by that one little tree bush at the end of the row. So I just want to show how you can see that these are 2-foot and 10-foot topographics from a GIS system, but we can shoot much more precise topographic data once we get our tech tools upgraded, and we'll be able to do more fine detail. But even at 2-foot topographic, you really have a tremendous advantage about how you design things. So let's go up and have a look at the block that I'm clearing here, where I'm clearing out for the cedar trees. Those got to come out so we can put in our fenced area for tomatoes and our first planting block, our first actual fenced planting block. And you can see I left a fence posted there. So I've gone through and put fence post locations in and stuff. I'm spacing it 20 feet on the edge, and I think we did 15 in from the end and then centered up on the last one. But more importantly, you can see how that valley that I was talking about, where the ginger and turmeric run right up through here in this row in here. And you can see how steep this ridge is here where it meets up. And this is all rock in here. Rock and some nice large cedar trees. I think we can get lots of nice cedar posts out of this for our fencing and for our other projects. But also this rock ridge might work out if we can get like a nice little hole in there and keep a shady spot. I think we could probably build a decent root cellar in that ridge, and that way we'll have a way to store potatoes and carrots and stuff for a little longer after we harvest if we need to. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to demonstrate just how much the topographic affects it and how easy it is to see some other details that you would otherwise not see on here. So yeah, just a brief introduction about topographic and elevation stuff. And a quick overview of the map with the new topographic lines on it. Big thanks to Marty.
If you haven't seen Regenerative Ag School parts 1 through 7 yet, go check them out. One thing about this chair, it's usually empty. I don't have a lot of time to sit around in it. But it's nice to have a chair handy for those few minutes you stop and have a sit and just listen. I know, I need a classier chair. We'll get there. Not gonna lie, that's kind of nice. Just remember, no matter how dark it might get, the sun will always pop through again. Hang in there. So down here at the Ford, I mentioned a head gasket issue. There's your guy right there. And I'm not going to go through the trouble of turning it over right now, but you can see it blowing by through the head gasket. So I'm going to have to put a gasket on it. That's kind of a pain in the butt. Mostly for all the stuff I have to take off to get to it. As is usually the case with things. Yeah, that's going to take some stuff because I'm going to have to drain the fluid out of the radiator, and I'm going to have to get all this crap off of it. Probably could leave the gas tank in place, so that might pop out. I don't know, I gotta go home and have a look at some of the YouTube channels that do good videos on repairing Ford 9Ns. Overall, I don't think it's a big deal. It's just going to be time consuming. That's one thing I'm short on as it is. But it is what it is. The potatoes are planted, so that's a relief. But I have tomatoes that have to go in, so
I may pivot and stick those into that fourth row for now, give them a chance to get going, rather than stress them. But I got to figure that out, and I got to be up fairly early for work tomorrow, so that's not going to happen tonight. Maybe I'll be able to get back to it tomorrow afternoon or something. For now, I'm going to go home and get some food, and I'm going to have a look at repairing this and what's actually involved, so I can have a scope of how much time it's actually going to take me. All right, just started chairs a little bit. It's time for some grass-fed burgers.